So this month, what we are being awake to is light, that light of wisdom, that light of truth, that light of spirit. And, are we finished? And today, December 8th, is a day that goes out of our Western tradition to celebrate another great light bearer in history, the Buddha, because December 8th is the day that's traditionally celebrated as the day that Buddha attained enlightenment. Those of you who know something about him may remember the story goes, or history tells us, he was a prince. He was a prince that was protected from all the evils of the outside world, and just thought everybody had a wonderful little life. And then one day he went out from the palace walls and found out that there was a thing called death and old age and sickness. And he knew that there was something he had to understand about that and help about that. So he spent several years in a variety of ways trying to wake up, and finally, thank God for all of us, found something he called the middle way, because he tried to be an ascetic and denying his body and denying this and that. Realized that didn't work. Yes. Mortification of the body does not work. Buddha proved it, so don't you be saying you have to deny this wonderful body of ours. So he found something called the middle way, and then it is said that he sat under something called the bodhi tree, and bodhi means wisdom. And he sat, and he sat, and he sat, and he was tempted by Maya, the spirit of illusion. See, all our greats get tempted. He was tempted, but he kept sitting, and finally he woke up. And when he began teaching, people would go up to him and say, "What are you? Are you a man? No. Are you a god? No. What are you?" He said, "I am awake. I am awake." And his message, speaking of light, was about how we each can be a lamp unto ourselves. He was not into being worshipped or set apart. He was into teaching so that others might open to that same awareness. So in honor of Buddha today, I thought that we would take some foundational teachings from Buddhism to support us in moving through this holiday season with the kind of equanimity and peace that Buddhism can show us. And the foundation of this, and what it all flows from, I was trying to create 3 distinct ideas, but they all really flow into each other. They all flow out of this idea of mindfulness. And mindfulness is self-awareness. It is that being awake to myself. And it certainly is being intentional about how I move through my day. And a big piece of that mindfulness, Buddhism would tell us, is to just notice. Just notice. Be awake and aware to notice what is going on inside of me. If something happens and I become joyful, just notice it. Perhaps more importantly, if something happens and I find myself getting angry, triggered, to just notice it. To just notice it and know that by noticing it, I don't have to act out. I don't have to express my anger. Neither do I have to repress it. That there is a middle way. I can just notice it. And so from this idea of mindfulness and being awake to ourselves and just noticing come 3 other things that I want to talk about today. First one is lighten up. Lighten up. And this is one of the things I love most about Buddhism. We don't often know it from the surface, but there is a lot of humor in Buddhism, and that humor, you guys are going to have to sit in the front row, is what I love about Buddhism is that there is a sense of humor. And if we can have that sense of humor about ourselves, if we can lighten up about who we are, things actually go better. And if this makes no sense to you, call Vicki, because Vicki, they're in the front row, because she knows all about that too. And our founder, Ernest Holmes, always warned against morbidity. And I went, whoa, that's a heavy word. But he was really saying, don't freak out when you find yourself thinking a thought that doesn't serve you. You don't have to freak out. Just notice. Do something different. And this whole idea of lightening up, not taking ourselves so seriously, is this antidote to this time of year when we can get very serious about doing it right, about having the perfect Christmas, getting the perfect present when we don't, if all the people in our lives gave us lists like these kids, it might be easier. Although my kid gave me a list and it's a little confusing. Shiny legging, running spandex things, but not really like leggings, but kind of. Thank you, Kira. Just give me a label and a name and I'll go for it. But anyway, we get so serious about creating Christmas or whatever our holiday is the right way. We get serious about doing it right. We forget what it's all about and think, oh, it's all about getting it perfect. And any time of year, we can find ourselves, because I know all of you who come to a center like this, being awake, moving on your spiritual path is important. And gosh darn if sometimes we don't get really serious about our spirituality. It's like, this is serious stuff. I'm meditating. Be quiet. Let me go meditate. And if anybody is some of you I know, as soon as you close your eyes and sit, man, you go deep. That would not be me. And if I get serious about my seeming inability to meditate in the way that I am imagining everyone else does, heavy, deep, and real, then I just mess up the practice that I do have. We get in our way by taking life, by taking ourselves, by taking everything around us too seriously. The Buddhists say, and especially Pema Chodron, who's a Tibetan Buddhist who's written several books, I love her. She says, honesty and humor are much more inspiring and helpful than the getting serious. Honesty and humor are much more inspiring and helpful. So here's some don'ts and do's. Don't take yourself, your practice, so seriously. Things can be important without being serious. Don't criticize yourself when you fall short of whatever is this perfection that you're making up or this stuff that you're making up. You think a wrong thought. Don't criticize yourself. You act unskillfully. Isn't that a great expression? You act unskillfully towards someone. Don't criticize yourself. You can just notice and think about how you would like to do something different. And then be curious. Instead of needing to have, and if you watch yourself, if you really pay attention to yourself, you will notice, or at least I do, that often I just move from one judgment to the next. Oh, that was bad. Oh, that was really good. Oh, man, I screwed that up. Oh, why is he wearing that? Oh, one judgment to the next. Boom, 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 boom. If we can set aside judgment and lighten up by being curious, I wonder why he's wearing that. I wonder why that person isn't choosing to turn their blinker on. More importantly, when we find that we get triggered and have some kind of feeling that we don't like, rather than snap to that criticism and judgment to go, I just got ticked off by that comment that person made. I wonder what that's about. That's not only taking ourselves lightly, but it's being much more awake and aware, because what happens is we get lost in the judgment, we get lost in the criticism, we get lost in the feeling, and then there is no room for greater awareness and understanding, because we've gotten distracted by the intensity of the feeling or by the criticism we heap on ourselves on top of it, instead of finding out what it's about so that something new can happen. And when we need to have all these judgments, we can be curious about that. I wonder why I'm needing to be so judgmental today. Curiosity will lead us to something. Criticism, anger, judgment, not so much. Not so much. So as you're practicing being curious, and as you're practicing just noticing what's going on, as the Buddhists would say, see if you can start lightening on those opinions, those judgments. Like, if you do find yourself walking down that road, boy, that person really shouldn't do that. They really should be a different way. Because I think that people should all be, do you guys, is it just me who goes on this road with judgment? And what you're doing is kind of hardening, crystallizing around the rightness of your judgment about how wrong somebody is being. If you can just open your grip a little and lighten up and just hold it lightly, then you can abide with what is going on. This lightening up helps us abide with what is going on rather than acting on it, making ourselves wrong about it, squishing it down. And when we can be curious and notice and lighten whatever is going on with us, we can create this other great thing that we call equanamity. We can get to that place of peacefulness instead of going all over the map. I don't know about you, but I don't really need a lot of emotional up and down at a time of year when I'm very busy. And I would really rather be kind of awake to light and joy and peace. And so if I can lighten up on what I'm thinking about myself and what I'm thinking about the world, then I can have more peace. So you all know your little trigger places. So start seeing where you can just be more curious and more awake. Now, for those of us who feel like, oh, well, gee, I haven't been, I've forgotten, and now you're back looking at this past week, let's remember another foundational idea within Buddhism, which is the power of the present moment. Because as soon as we're back there, not beating ourselves up for what we didn't do right. We don't allow ourselves to take the power of the present moment. And as Buddhism says, and as New Thought says, right now is an opportunity to awaken, right where you are, right in your seat, right with the thought that you have right now, right with the feeling that you have right now, right with the comfort or discomfort or itch or curiosity or annoyance or impatience. Right with that, right now, is an opportunity to wake up, to know something different. To wake up to ourselves, the Buddhists would say, as religious scientists, we say, to wake up to know God in me is greater than this annoyance, this impatience, this stuff. And so when we wake up, however that waking up is in the moment, it is always the gift, and it is always the now. You can't wake up 10 minutes ago, and you can't wake up 10 minutes from now. You can only wake up in the now. Ernest Holmes says over and over again, you have to start where you are. You have to start where you are. And Buddhism says the same thing. You start right now with where you are. And if you notice that you're feeling loving toward someone, that loving kindness, if you go, wow, if I am feeling this now, there is that capacity in me to expand this and feel way more love. If I'm awake, if I'm just even awake to a thought I'm having about what's wrong right now, I'm having that thought. Just that awakeness means, I have the capacity to be awake, and I have the capacity to be more awake. So every moment becomes an opportunity to know that we have the potential to be more awake, more mindful, more loving, that we can build on whatever we are in this present moment, we can build on it. And our conscious knowing of that in the present moment is what builds us, what keeps us awakening up. And that is powerful. Any moment, every moment. The December Science of Mind magazine has as its theme, everything is holy now. I love that. Everything is holy now. And so this moment also is that opportunity to know the sacred. Every moment, every place can be a place of worship. Which is why this teaching is it can be challenging to get people to come to church, because we all know God is everywhere present. The infinite is everywhere present. Love is everywhere present. And I can choose in the present moment to know that. Whether I'm out in nature, whether I'm in a beautiful sanctuary like this, whether I'm having a cup of tea in the afternoon with somebody I love, every moment can be a sacred moment. Kiki wrote that beautiful song, Holy Moments. Oh, I guess that was from a talk I did. I think the first Christmas I was here. That every moment in knowing that power of can be sacred. And that is the power of the now, this moment. We can use it anytime. Especially if we remember to breathe. Everybody want to do that right now? You can get that pause between those roiling thoughts. Oh. And finally, Another teaching that I want to remind you of that is so central to Buddhism is the power of compassion. And what can seem unique to Buddhism, especially compared to our Christian tradition, is that compassion first is for ourselves. Buddhism is so wise that it understands that it is really impossible to have compassion for anyone else if I am beating myself up. Sometimes the message we hear from Christianity is take care of everybody else first, be compassionate, then finally, if you've done enough, if you've given enough, if you've loved enough, maybe you can share a little of that compassion with yourself. I don't know why we did this with that teaching. I don't know. But that's why I love to go to Buddhism, because it reminds me, have compassion for myself in all that I am trying to do and all that you're trying to do. Even when you get so serious, it's because you want to be a blessing on this planet. And sometimes it seems difficult, and sometimes we seem like we fall down and we're never going to get there, so we could get real serious about it. Have compassion for how hard you try to be the best person you can be, because I know you all do that. I know you all go there. Pema Chodron says it this way. She says, we are each a poignant mix of what isn't all that beautiful, all our stuff, and yet is deeply loved. We are a poignant mix of what isn't all that beautiful with our criticisms and our judgments, and yet what is deeply loved by that infinite, by that love that has no boundaries. So in all of us, in our imperfection, are deeply loved. We would say by Spirit, by God, Goddess, by the infinite. And so, if that infinite isn't finding fault with us, who are we to decide we know better? Excuse me. Who are you to decide that you know better than God about how messed up you are? I think not. So when we have that compassion for ourselves, wherever we are, however we're being, that can move us into being more of who we want to be. Just like the humor helps, the compassion helps. I don't know who created that saying, get whipped into shape. But whipping never gets us into shape. It is that gentleness and compassion with ourselves and say, honey, just let go a little. You're okay. That helps us open up. And when we're in those moments where we are opened up, then that compassion we can start sharing. That open heart. When we have those moments of it, it is wonderful because we can share it. Whether we share it with the people who are around us in what we say, or whether in consciousness we send. There's that wonderful song, I send my love over the mountains, I send my love over to the seas. That we consciously send our light, our love to everyone on the planet. That we can expand our compassion and send it and share it. And with compassion, we can also use those moments when we do feel closed down, when we do feel impatient, when we do feel angry, that we can kind of wake up and say, oh, this is what others are feeling right now. This is what that person I was pointing at yesterday in my mind and saying, well, why are they so on it? This is what they're feeling. And I can extend my compassion to them. Does that make sense? Do you get what I'm saying? I was at Whole Foods 2 days ago had just gotten to the parking lot, and there were a lot of cars, and I pulled into a space, and all of a sudden there was a big honk, 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 and I didn't know if it was at me or if I hadn't noticed somebody. And then this woman came by me, and she started yelling, I guess, at the honking guy, saying, you know, you're only thinking of somebody but yourself, besides yourself, and I just sat in my car for a moment, because I was a little bit shocked by the honk and then shocked by this yelling voice, and looked at her, and, you know, I could have that part of myself that goes, well, what's the matter with her? She's not being very peaceful. But all of a sudden, I had that because I've had my moments of being activated this week. All of a sudden, I had this moment because I had read this to say, yes, that's what I've stepped into sometimes. She's not different from me. In my anger and my impatience, I am one with her in her anger and impatience. And so I just sat for a moment in the car and tried to extend that compassion and that peace to her and the honking guy and whatever. So we can use compassion in so many different ways. And again, it's being mindful. And again, it's lightening up. And again, it's using the power of the present moment. Who we are is so huge in reality. Maybe not in corporeal fact, but in truth, in reality. Who we are is so huge, and that ability of our hearts to embrace it all is so huge. So I want to invite you to take Buddha with you into this very seemingly Christian of seasons. Take that mindfulness. Take that lightening up on our thoughts and on our opinions and on ourselves. Use the present moment wherever you are to awaken, to know something different. And use your compassion. These all lead us to a path of peace, and a peace of mind, peace of heart, greater joy and greater love. I don't know about you, but that's what I want more of this holiday season. So let's go within. So as I am replaying in my mind that little playlet within The King and I, where all the women are saying, thanks to Buddha. I give thanks to the wonderful wisdom of Buddha. That light that was and is Buddha nature is the light that is the Christ within us. It is the light of the divine. It is the same light. It may language itself differently. It may have been taught differently. It may have come through different traditions. But that Buddha nature, that light, is within each of us. There are not just some of us who have the light. No, it is in each of us. We were born with it. We came to this planet. We incarnated with it. It is that light that is wisdom, that is peace, that is compassion, that is joy. And it is that light which, no matter what can appear to be going on in our lives, is never truly dimmed. And so right here and right now, I claim for myself and anyone who wishes to join me, I claim that light as the truth of my being, and I open and awake more fully to that light so that I can take myself and my funny little opinions more lightly. So that I can lighten up on myself and everyone around me who is doing the best that we can. who gets hurried, who gets stressed, who sometimes feels the pinch of difficulty around this time of year, I awake and join and know the light and see the light. I use each moment when I remember to be more awake to this light, to be more awake to my potential, to be more awake for my capacity for awareness and mindfulness and joy and wisdom and love. And I know this light as compassion, as knowing myself one with all that is, and that each moment, each situation is an opportunity for me to expand my heart and know that we are all on this journey together. Sometimes doing really well, and sometimes not. And that's all right, as long as I recognize the truth of the light that we are, that will carry us through. So I claim this knowing. I claim it for each and every person here. I claim the light. I am grateful. And so it is.